Higher education financing under Trump. Key changes and implications. Overview of recent policy changes. Since returning to office, President Trump and Congress have advanced sweeping changes to federal higher education policy, many closely aligned with recommendations from Project 2025, a conservative policy blueprint developed by the Heritage Foundation and allied organizations. These changes include major restrictions and restructuring of federal student loans and grants, moves to privatize or eliminate core federal lending programs, overhauls to accreditation and increased scrutiny of higher education institutions, deep cuts to federal education funding and support programs. Key provisions impacting middle and lower income students. 1. Federal student loan changes. Elimination or restriction of loan programs. Grad Plus and Parent Plus loans are being eliminated or heavily restricted, removing a major financing option for families unable to cover the gap between aid and college costs. Subsidized loans for undergraduates are being phased out, meaning interest accrues while students are still in school. Most existing repayment plans are being consolidated into two options: a fixed payment plan and a new income-based plan, with fewer protections and higher minimum payments for most borrowers. Temporary deferment due to unemployment or hardship is being limited or eliminated for new loans. Privatization of lending. Project 2025 and the administration's proposals aim to shift federal lending to private markets, where loans generally have higher interest rates and fewer consumer protections. 2. Pell Grants and need-based aid. Tighter eligibility for Pell Grants. The minimum course load for Pell eligibility is increasing from 24 to 30 credit hours per year, and students enrolled less than half-time are no longer eligible. Students with a Student Aid Index, SAI, exceeding twice the maximum Pell Grant amount will lose eligibility, affecting families with multiple children in college or moderate assets. Over 60% of current Pell recipients could lose access or see reduced awards. Short-term training grants. A new Pell program is being created for short-term, workforce-oriented training, but not for traditional degree programs. 3. Loan forgiveness and repayment safety nets. End of Public Service Loan Forgiveness, PSLF. The PSLF program, which forgave loans for teachers, nurses, and other public servants after 10 years, is being eliminated, affecting millions of borrowers. No new broad-based forgiveness. The administration has ended efforts to forgive large amounts of federal student debt, and is resuming aggressive collections, including wage garnishment for those in default. 4. Institutional and accreditation reforms. Stricter accreditation standards. New executive orders and legislation are overhauling accreditation, emphasizing intellectual diversity and performance outcomes, with the stated goal of lowering costs and increasing competition. Cuts to federal support. Programs supporting low-income and first-generation students, e.g., TRIO, Gear Up, Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grants, are being eliminated or cut, with the administration arguing that states and institutions should fill the gap. Pros and cons. Potential effects for middle and lower income students. Pros: potential cost savings for taxpayers. Reducing or privatizing federal lending and cutting grant programs could lower federal expenditures and future taxpayer liabilities. Market pressure on colleges. By limiting federal aid, policymakers argue that colleges will be forced to control tuition and focus on workforce outcomes. Workforce training expansion. Short-term Pell Grants could help some students pursue in-demand technical certifications more affordably. Cons: reduced access and affordability. The loss of Parent Plus and subsidized loans, tighter Pell eligibility, and elimination of safety nets will make college less accessible for low and middle income students, especially those attending part-time or from families with moderate resources. More students will be forced into private loans with higher interest rates and fewer protections, increasing long-term debt burdens. Widening inequality. The end of PSLF and other forgiveness programs will disproportionately impact public service workers and those with lower incomes, potentially saddling them with unmanageable debt. Cuts to support programs may reduce college enrollment and completion rates among disadvantaged groups. Institutional instability. Deep cuts to federal funding and stricter accreditation rules may destabilize colleges, especially those serving high-need populations. Connections to Project 2025. Many of these changes are either directly recommended in Project 2025 or closely mirror its policy blueprint. The plan calls for privatizing or eliminating most federal student loans, Ending loan forgiveness and income-driven repayment. Restricting or eliminating federal oversight and support for higher education. Overhauling accreditation to emphasize intellectual diversity and reduce perceived ideological bias. The Trump administration's actions and legislative proposals to date have consistently aligned with these recommendations. Conclusion: the Trump administration's higher education policy, shaped by Project 2025, marks a significant shift away from federal support for students and institutions, toward privatization, stricter eligibility, and reduced safety nets. While supporters argue this approach will control costs and reduce taxpayer risk, critics warn it will make college less affordable and accessible, especially for middle and lower income students, and could widen educational inequality in the years ahead. Long-term effects of higher education financing changes. Short-term savings versus long-term earning capacity. The Trump administration's higher education policies, aligned with Project 2025, prioritize short-term taxpayer savings through reduced federal spending on student aid and privatization of loans. However, these changes risk undermining long-term economic mobility and earning potential for middle and lower-income students. Below is a nonpartisan analysis of the potential long-term effects. Short-term savings for taxpayers, federal budget reductions, cutting or privatizing federal loan programs and eliminating forgiveness initiatives, e.g., public service loan forgiveness, could save taxpayers an estimated $350 billion over 10 years. Lower default risk. Privatizing loans shifts default risk from the government to private lenders, reducing taxpayer exposure to unpaid debt. Long-term consequences for students and the economy. 1. Reduced educational attainment. Lower enrollment. Middle and lower income students, unable to afford college without federal aid, may delay or forego higher education. For example, Pell Grant cuts could exclude 60% of current recipients. Eliminating Parent PLUS loans disproportionately harms Black and Latino families, who rely on them to bridge funding gaps. Impact on earnings. Workers with bachelor's degrees earn $1,493 per week versus $708 per week for those without a high school diploma. Reduced access to degrees could suppress lifetime earnings for millions, perpetuating cycles of poverty. 2. Increased student debt burdens. Higher costs from private loans. Private loans typically have higher interest rates, 8 to 12% versus 4 to 7% for federal loans, and lack income-driven repayment options. Debt discharge benefits. Studies show loan forgiveness increases borrowers' income by $3,000 over 3 years by enabling job changes and geographic mobility. Ending forgiveness programs eliminates this economic boost. 3. Labor market and economic stagnation. Skills gap. Reduced college enrollment could worsen shortages in high-demand fields, e.g., healthcare, engineering, slowing innovation and economic growth. Lower tax revenue. Workers without post-secondary education contribute less in taxes over their lifetimes, offsetting short-term savings. 4. Widening inequality. Racial and class disparities. Low-income students, first-generation attendees, and minority groups, already underrepresented in higher education, will face steeper barriers to upward mobility. Geographic divide. Rural and underserved communities, where colleges rely heavily on federal aid, may see institutions close or reduce programs. Project 2025's role. Project 2025's proposals, privatizing loans, ending forgiveness, and tightening aid, are designed to shrink federal involvement in education. While this aligns with fiscal conservatism, it ignores evidence that federal support correlates with higher earnings and economic growth. For example, Pell Grants generate a $2.25 return for every $1 invested through increased tax revenue and reduced welfare reliance. Public service loan forgiveness incentivizes careers in essential fields like teaching and nursing, which are already facing staffing crises. Conclusion: while short-term taxpayer savings are politically appealing, the long-term economic and social costs of these policies could far outweigh the benefits. Reduced educational access threatens to create a less skilled workforce, suppress earnings, and deepen inequality, outcomes that harm both individual prosperity and national competitiveness. Project 2025's vision risks trading immediate fiscal gains for a weaker, less equitable economy in the decades ahead. Thanks for watching. Stay stronger. Stay smarter. Like and subscribe for more information and updates.